We are going to the third level, where we look at the moralist or the humanist explanation of the purpose of life. The humanists are very interesting people. They believe in the expression of freedom, that every human being has a right, which is a good thing. They believe that as human beings, we need to exercise our intelligence. We need to reason, and we need to lead independent life, supporting one another. That is key. They may be philanthropists because they believe in helping one another. Humanists stand strong in defending people's rights because they see all human beings as one, and we do not have to injure one another, but we need to love one another, support one another. What they don't agree to is this issue of God behind us. They do not recognize that aspect. They feel that human beings have the capacity to live a good life. But if you live without the recognition that the purpose of life is not determined by human beings, because human beings do not on them or by themselves came onto this earth, that human beings to a very large extent cannot even explain where they come from, then trying to leave the explanation of existence to the humanists will be a big problem. For instance, can they explain how we fall asleep? What makes us fall asleep? What makes us wake up? Can they? No. Can they explain to us what makes us to eventually die? No, it is not easy. So if you say it is good to lead a good life on earth, respecting the rights of others, acknowledging that you must exercise your mind, that is fine. But there are things beyond the mind and there are things beyond rights. Freedom is a good thing for everybody to have. We must respect each other. But when it comes to the purpose of life, there are bigger things that we need to be looking at and not be self-dependent as if we are the center of the universe or of the planet. That is a flaw in the humanist approach. But it doesn't mean they are wrong. As I said earlier on, we have levels of development. We are at different levels. And we cannot say that one level is better than another level. At each level, there are some limitations. That is all that we are trying to explain. So out of the moralist argument, out of the humanist argument about the purpose of life, develop the religious school of thought. The religious school of thought says clearly that we were created. The religious school of thought said clearly that human beings, the earth planet as we have it, was created by a supernatural being. This creation story is what the humanists want to listen to. It's not something they want to think about. But the religious group says, indeed, we were created by a supernatural being. You may call him God. Now, in saying that we are created by a supernatural being, the religious group is portraying that there are things beyond the physical. That man, when I say man, that is not to exclude females or women or others. No, I'm only using that generically. It represents all gender. So, if man is created by a supernatural being, then indeed there should be a purpose for his existence on earth. And that has been well explained by the religious people. But there are classes in the religious group. We have in them the liberals, and we also have in them the conservatives. Both have their foundation in the materialistic explanation of the existence of man on earth, which is a bit problematic. I will explain why it is a bit problematic. Let us take the liberals, for instance. They are open to receiving scientific information and inventions. They welcome that in explaining religious phenomena. They do not reject science, but they also have their foundation in the sense that, for them, things must be explained physically. There should be materialistic explanation to religious texts. So when you talk about salvation for humanity, they will be looking at it not in terms of the individual, but in terms of the collective, which is not a bad thing to do because that is their level. Now, when you look at the conservative religious groups, they act strict, they keep to their tradition, and they explain things materially. So let's use Christianity for example. If you talk about the whale that swallowed Jonah, it is strictly believed that it was a physical activity or happening. The whale, as we know in the sea, is a whale. And Jonah, as a human being, yes, Jonah. And indeed, he was swallowed up, as the story goes. They do not look at things beyond physical explanation of religious phenomena. They are conservatives. They don't want any change. Just as it was written in text, so must it be. So what is the source of information for the religious group about the purpose of life? Regardless of their material explanation of religious phenomena, religious groups indeed confirm that we were created by God and that we were put on this planet to worship Him, to serve Him, and that we should have dominion over this earth planet. In having dominion over this earth planet, there are certain laws that have been given to mankind. And mankind is supposed to obey those laws. Loving God, loving your neighbor, offering service to your neighbor, and doing all that is necessary so that you can serve your community. This is most welcomed. But there is a little bit of challenge in terms of the religious aspect, which I'll be explaining very soon. The religious group indeed has a certain philosophy. If you do well on earth, you will be blessed, you will receive the blessings of God, you will enjoy life more or less, and you will go to heaven when you die. That is the philosophy. If you love God, if you serve God, if you serve your neighbor, there is a place for you to go after you have left the earth. Indeed, that place is what is called heaven. But if you don't do well, you will go to a place of punishment called hellfire. So by so saying, some level of fear is put into people that indeed they must worship God in fear. They must serve in fear. And they serve just to avoid the hellfire. It is not bad. It puts people up to do the right thing. There is also this philosophy in the religious thought that when you die, you remain where you are until the last day when the trumpet sounds, and indeed you will rise up and be judged. That is not bad because it works for some people, but others it does not work at all. So the purpose of life on earth is significantly to worship God. And once you have worshiped God, you have praised Him, you have glorified Him, you have served your neighbor, and you have led the life that is required of you as stipulated in the holy books, you have done your part on earth, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing to do because indeed we need to know what is the source of information. As I said earlier on, it's as a result of belonging to a group and learning about these things. So the religious group indeed talks about a supernatural being that has created mankind, that has given laws to mankind, and once mankind has followed those laws, there is heaven to go. If mankind does not follow those laws, there is hell to go. So, if that is the thought of the religious group, what there is again, the next level is the spiritual group. We call it the esoteric group. The esoteric group has something interesting to say. It accepts the teachings of the religious group, but says that there are things beyond just faith, and says that there are things beyond just worshiping. The issue of enjoyment, sadness, happiness, all these things are seen by the esoteric group as not the purpose of life. And let me say it again. If you have wealth, if you are popular, people praise you every time. You have all the things that you desire. That is not the purpose of life. That is what the esoteric group is saying. They are a means to helping you to achieve the purpose of life. And what is it? The esoteric group says all human beings are spirits in flesh. We are all spirits in flesh, and that we are part of God. The Creator differentiates us within Himself, not outside of Himself. Within Himself. But we are young spirits that are yet to grow, that are yet to mature. And the means of maturation is this earth planet. So we put on flesh, we as spirits put on flesh and are on this planet in order to grow spiritually, so that eventually we can become like the Creator. We will be in a position, we will be able to create living things like the Creator did with us. Now, the purpose of life, therefore, is to exhibit the qualities that the Creator has in us. What are those qualities? It begins with love. It begins with spiritual knowledge. It begins with you knowing that part of God is in you, and it is also in your neighbor. That you resonate with your neighbor with that consciousness. The esoteric group does not demean the religious group. As I said earlier on, these are levels of progress, levels of development. So, the esoteric group or the spiritual group, even though they agree and uphold that there is a God without, a God outside that we must serve, the conclusion with them is that until you unfold the God within you, you cannot successfully serve the God outside. What then is the God within you? The God within you is the Spirit. What makes you do what you do? What makes you talk? What makes you eat? What makes you walk? What makes you sleep? What makes you wake up? It is the Spirit in you that does all that. But that Spirit is conscious materially. It is not conscious of its spiritual powers. So we are here on earth to gradually develop and unfold our spiritual powers. In the unfoldment of our spiritual powers, It is good to have cars, it's good to have money, it's good to have children, to be married and all that, but they are not the ones that actually lead you to spiritual development. They are a means actually, but the means is not that by having those things automatically you have developed spiritual powers. No. But that you need to serve them. That is the basis. That you need to serve them. Even your own parents, in a sense, must serve you by providing your needs. And you, in turn, must also provide for others at the right time. But the fact that you have children, that alone doesn't bring you to God. But the fact that you have money, that alone doesn't bring you to God. The fact that you have cars, that alone doesn't bring you to God. But the use of those things to promote the welfare and activities of others begins to make you develop spiritually. And in addition, there are spiritual exercises that should be performed. And the basis of those spiritual exercises is love. It means there is something in love that openly is not being mentioned. On this platform, we're going to talk more about what is in love so that people know the spiritual aspect of it. Love and service are the key to promoting spiritual development. So, the esoteric says, once you begin to live that life and you are beginning to exercise spiritually, then eventually you will be able to develop your spiritual qualities and do like you were created. We were all created, except that some have become more spiritually awakened than others. It doesn't mean that others cannot also catch up. They can catch up depending on their understanding and their preparedness to do so. So the spiritual class agrees with the religious group, but says that even the writings as they are written spiritually. For you to understand the texts, you need to have some spiritual knowledge about what the text referred to. Otherwise, you would take the writings of scriptures on its or on their face value, and that will not actually explain the purpose of life. So, the esoteric class or the spiritual class says the spirit is the one that is making the journey to become perfect. It pulls on physical bodies and at a point in time puts away the physical body and journeys through the spiritual worlds, and at the right time and as appointed comes back to continue its material work as it has done in previous lives. That is not what the religious group accepts. For the religious groups, once you are dead, that ends it. You have to remain where you are until the last day when you are woken up and judged. If you do well, you go to heaven. If you don't do well, you go to hell. Now, the esoteric group says no. The purpose of life is not about enjoyment. It's not about sanctions. But it is about you developing that godlike aspects. So that one, you have your spiritual powers. Two, you have a raise in your consciousness. Three, you have love abounding. Once you have those things in you, you will go back more conscious to the Heavenly Father, who is the Creator. So if you look at the various schools of thought and what they have said about the purpose of life, none is wrong. They are all pointing us towards something. And depending on your level, pick what you can pick. On this platform, we prefer to talk more about the esoteric aspect, that there are hidden aspects of physical things. Every physical thing that we see, there are hidden aspects in them. And that if you want to reach the God that you praise outside, you first have to unfold the God within you. Until you unfold that God within you, it is not easy meeting the God outside. So in a gist, the purpose of life is not about material things. It's about to transmute the material things into spiritual things. The purpose of life is not about enjoyment. It is about love and service so that you can develop your spiritual bodies. Talking about spiritual bodies, we'll be looking at them again into details the next time, where we'll be looking at the various bodies of a human being. Once we are beginning to progress in that manner, then we will understand that indeed we are just strangers in this physical world, trying to transmute physical things into spiritual things. But remaining and getting attached to the physical things will only worsen our situation. You have listened to the purpose of life. We will come your way again with another episode where we'll be talking about the various bodies of a human being. And this will be done from the esoteric aspect. This platform will talk more about the esoteric aspect, the spiritual aspect, without losing sight of the religious aspect. Once a while, references will be made to the material aspect and also to the ordinary person's aspect. Because as I said earlier on, we are on a journey, and we are at different levels of the journey. Whoever is leading today should not think that the one who is behind cannot catch up. That person can catch up. But it is better when all of us have this consciousness, this awakening that we are spirits on earth, trying to unfold our godlike qualities so that we can become better. I thank you very much, and we'll see you with our next presentation.